For Hamilton Law and Mediation, the Why Do Pets Matter podcast, and of course, our wonderful MAAP community call every Wednesday night at 6:30, where we talk about things that concern pet owners regarding the plans they need to make for their pets. And boy, are we busy this week. Oh my God. We had the fires that are going crazy out in California and the flooding from Hurricane Ida. And then there was even the discussion, whether it's true or not, we're still waiting for confirmation, that some canine warrior dogs from contractors were left behind in Afghanistan. They're trying to still figure out what that is. And there's much information about that. That's some verified, some not. I think that a lot of things went wackadoodle. So we'll all see what comes out of it. But I want to welcome everyone here today. So I'm going to start with you, Kieran. How are you?
All good, all quiet, and everything moving according to
All quiet
plan.
on the Tenerife front. Good.
All
Yay.
quiet. No hurricanes spotted
I know
here
you're
yet.
living such a quiet life. I don't know. Hi, Sally. How are you?
Definitely quiet right now, and possibly tornadoes tonight through about, I think they're saying 6 a.m.
So you know that there are things you have to do to make sure you and the girls and Gordon are safe during the tornado period. I know that one of our colleagues was in her bathroom with a mattress while the tornadoes were going through Annapolis this afternoon. She's fine. The dogs are fine, but the tornado passed about 3 blocks from her home. So these are always worrisome things that you really have to plan where you and your dogs are going to be, cats, birds, horses, wherever they're going to be when things like this happen. Hey, Connie, how are you? I know that you have something special to tell us about Mr. Casey, and also you're in the midst of the fires.
Well, fortunately, we in SoCal are not. We're getting, we have a few, going on in the surrounding foothills, but
in the scheme of things, not so bad. Fires.
Fortunately, they're being knocked down very quickly. Not so much up north. South Lake Tahoe, of course, is just literally raging, and the evacuations are into the tens of thousands.
Is that by Truckee and Sacramento?
Well, Sacramento and Truckee are to the west. South Lake Tahoe is right on the Nevada-California state line. And in fact, the fire has gone over the state line into North Lake Tahoe, which is Nevada. But the air is absolutely toxic. To look at the pictures from the news broadcasts is unbelievable, and I know that area very, very well. I skied it as a kid, and my sister in the Bay Area, who has Goldens, said that you can't even let your dogs outside; they come right back in. And she said you can't open your windows; the air is so bad in the San Francisco area.
And I'm sure their filters are working overtime as well, because the air conditioner has to pull the air from somewhere to pull it into the house.
Absolutely. And she's right on the East Bay, and only a few years ago, because of climate change, had to install air conditioning for the very first time, but she's extremely glad that she has it.
Now for the fires, right.
For the fires.
Hi, Joanne. Hi, Joanne. How are you? Can you unmute yourself and introduce yourself? Or not. It's okay. We don't make anybody talk to us, but we always introduce ourselves because we're a community and we talk about our dogs or our cats or our birds or our horses. I didn't let Connie finish, so I'm going to. So what was the big news about Mr. Casey?
Well, I'm sorry. I got, into disaster before good stuff, but Mr. Casey, my 2-year-old Wheaton boy, who hasn't shown in a year and a half since he was 11 months old because of the COVID shutdown here in California, took Winter's dog not once but twice at the Santa Barbara Kennel Club show weekend, and I was very, very proud of him. We won under 2 very distinguished terrier judges, one of whom is a Wheaton breeder judge, Cindy Vogels, who was judged best in show at Westminster.
I know Cindy Vogels. Yep.
Everybody knows Cindy Vogels. And she, of course, was very active in the AKC Canine Health Foundation for years. Right. And her mother, Jackie Gottlieb, who is going on 100, is literally called Grandma Wheaton because she brought the breed out to the Western states way back. So that was a huge win. But I also found out how much badly in shape I am, in need of getting back in shape, running around the show ring with a boy who can really move like a racehorse. So I have my work cut out for me.
Oh, believe me, walking around Nashville Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at the event that my husband had, he had a tug named in his name that's going to go up and going to go up and down the Mississippi. It's a Ingram tug, and it pushes barges up and down the Mississippi. So we were there for a big party. And I have to tell you, I was walking 7,000 steps a day with the new hip, and it was going really well, except for the old knee. So, okay, so I have the new hip, but the old knee really stinks. So we'll be going in for some more. As my son says, they're just going to put another Lego in, Mom. No problem. They're just replacing the Legos. So, Kathy, what's up with you? How are the girls?
They're good. It's a little cooler, so we've been outside more. And I went down to Wilmington on Monday, and I boarded both of them Monday night into Tuesday. So when I went to pick them up yesterday, Emma, who usually gets lifted into the back of my car because she's spoiled, jumped right into the crate.
Yeah,
but they're fine. They're fine.
Oh, good. So, Joanne, I'll try you again if you'd like to join us and let us know where you're from and what kind of pets you have. Great. If not a problem. Tonight, we're going to talk about, as I said before, we're going to talk about planning for a disaster for your pets. I know that Kieran lives in Tenerife, so I'm not so sure that there are very many disasters that his adopted dog that he gets every once in a while needs to prepare for, but he knows he's here to catch up on all that information in case anything ever does happen in Tenerife. Sally knows that we're there for floods and hurricanes and tornadoes tonight, so she knows that we're preparing for that and what to do. Of course, Connie shared with us the fear of fire that's in California, and those other pesky things, earthquakes. So, it's not like as my son said, she lives on God's Etch-a-Sketch. So it is sort of a little wild. Kathy and I both live in North Carolina, so we get a lot of the hurricane and a lot of the flooding that comes from incredible rain now, and also heat. So if you have a pet and you live in areas with changing weather or unstable weather, you really have to make sure that if you make your plan, you have someone there who can make sure the pets are safe when you're not there. Like Kathy said, she wasn't going to be home. She had her dogs go to a kennel where they would be safe. She and I both just moved to North Carolina, so we're building our 3 people. We're going to work on that, she and I together, because it is really important that we know that we have people close by, far away, who are going to take our dogs. If you have dogs that you co-own, so I co-own dogs with Sally. I know that Connie might co-own dogs with people. You just have to be transparent when you make your plan. So when you make your plan and you have the people who you'd like to take your dogs, if you have a breeder, co-owner, and you've signed a contract, which everybody does with me, there isn't a dog that walks out of my house that can be placed anywhere without my permission. However, if your next door neighbor, your son, your husband are a better fit for the dog, then all I need to do is make sure they know that I'm here, and we sign a little bit of an agreement that says, in the event that Susie Smith passes away, and I co-own with Susie Smith, that Susie has told me that Jim Smith or her son Thomas Smith would love to take the dog, and then Jim and Thomas and I sit down and talk about how that dog will pass from me to them, with the same proviso that if something happened to them, the dog would come back to me. Because really good breeders, if you're buying a dog and the breeder doesn't take the dog back, no questions asked, no matter when, there's a problem there, because those breeders should be taking those dogs back if, God forbid, something happens to them. I believe, and this is just me, that breeders should refund the money, some money, all of the money. I say this because when I did have a woman who placed one of my dogs, The judge said to me, but they're not getting any money back for the money they spent to keep the dog for the last 4 years. Why should they have to give you the dog back without getting some compensation for keeping the dog healthy and bringing it to the vet and feeding it? And I said, well, that's sort of pet ownership. But the judge had a point. And so from that day forward, which I can tell you was back in the early 90s, my contracts give you a full refund for the life of the dog. So I don't really care. I want to make sure that if anything happens to you, that you get the money back for the dog and I get the dog. But in saying that, if one of my owners came to me and said, listen, the next door neighbor knows Fluffy beautifully. She walks her when I'm not home. She stays with her when I go on business trips. She knows the vet. The vet knows her. She's just a really wonderful person. Then I would raise my hand and say, okay, let's have a Zoom call. Let's do something, have coffee if we're all living in the same area. And let me introduce myself to her and her to me and say, listen, the only thing I want is to give you the same peace of mind that my owner has, that I am always there to help you. I'm always there to mentor you. And I'm always there to take the dog if you can't keep it. So we just put everything in writing. I know that all of you here, because we're repeat offenders, and thank you so much, Joanne, for joining these repeat offenders. When we make our plans, they have to be in writing. When we change anything about our plan, it has to be in writing. Most of us have incredible, and most of the people on this call, before this call started a year and change ago, because we started this call back in 2014, but really in earnest when COVID hit, because people were getting sick and didn't know what to do with their dogs. So I had to really rethink and think outside the box for the MAP plan. You have to make your plan in writing. You have to write it down. And then you have to tell the people who are your caregivers that they're your caregivers, and you need at least 3, and only one can be a family member. And everybody says, what are you, crazy? My son and my daughter know my dogs inside and out. I don't have to write down how to care for them. Oh yeah, you do. You really do. Because if you want them to be cared for the way you want them to be cared for, then you better write it down. And you better talk to your kids about it or your caregivers. You want other people than your family to be caregivers as well. Because you might be away with your entire family and the dogs might need care. And so having your family member be the only one, never a good thing. I found this out when I broke my ankle, that I couldn't take care of my dogs. And my husband told me he wasn't going to take care of my dogs. And my sons were away. So I was like, oh my God, there's no family member here to take care of my dogs. So that's why I built this plan. But the other thing I found was that when my husband broke his shoulder, I put the MAP plan in place. Now, I could take care of my dogs. Absolutely, I could. But I was able to go to the hospital for his surgery. I was able to really be with him for the first week or 2 when he was really in pain, not having to worry about the dogs, the dogs got walked, the dogs got cared for. I was, of course, right there, letting them out in the morning, letting them run around the house. But I knew that there was somebody else coming in to make sure they got dinner, to make sure they got walks. It was just my peace of mind. And it was wonderful, because really when you're taking care of a sick loved one, whether it's a broken shoulder or it's cancer or it's anything else, keeping those dogs in your life to give you that fortitude and strength is so important. Yet you might not physically be able to care for them. And then you don't want to carry that guilt that they've been in a crate all day while you've been at the hospital. You don't want that. So this MAP plan kicks in for that. So the M stands for making a plan. The A stands for appointing caregivers, got to be 3. And in your will, you really want to make the remainder of the pet trust, because you have to have a pet trust that's outside your will. We talk about that. This is only a half-hour program, so I race through this so everybody gets a little bit of an idea. We're, of course, having our next planning session, October 15th and 16th, a Friday and a Saturday. And Rose, let me know. I think those are the right days. It's going to be from 11 to 1. And hopefully some of you will be able to join us to really absolutely sit down and make the MAP plan. It's incredibly affordable, because to sit down with me is about $300 an hour. And this is less than that. And you get 4 hours with me. So on any day, it's a great deal. But I really want to make sure that everyone understands that You appoint your caregivers from people you know, from people you trust. And if you don't think you know anyone in the area, which Kathy and I have talked about a number of times because we're in new areas, we really do need to make concerted efforts to talk to our neighbors who have dogs, walk around our developments. I know Kathy lives in a development and I live in a development. Walk around the development, see who has a dog, and ask them who takes care of your dog, who grooms your dog, because that way you are connecting with people who are already known and trusted by neighbors. Now, they may not measure up to your standard, but at least you have a name. You're not going cold. Then it's, of course, connecting with a veterinarian in the area. If you've been in your area and love your vet, fabulous. Ask the vet techs if they do any pet sitting. Ask them if they recommend any pet sitters, and then interview the pet sitters. Because, quite frankly, I know I'm really parochial, but I like to keep my dogs in my own house because I don't want anybody to run away. I would put them in a kennel if that was all that was open to me, but I would probably never let them go. Sorry, everyone who has their own pet sitting in their own home. I'm sorry. I wouldn't let them go there because unless I know you for 30 years, there's probably little chance I will let you take my dogs who don't have a fenced in yard. But some people who remain nameless, I know for 30 years, and I give them my dogs gleefully with no fenced in yards, and my dogs love to be with them. But you really do have to think about these things. And of course, the other A of the MAAP, so it's MAA, the other A of the MAAP is addressing the needs of your pets, which comes along with what is this pet like in storms? What is this pet like on the 4th of July? What is this pet like in humidity, in cold? How does this pet react? Does it react well to children, to cats? You need to really let people know that. So again, as I said before, you got to write all this down. Thank you, Rose. I did get the right dates. I'm so pleased when I remember things correctly. And you want to publish it. And what does publishing mean? Well, again, it means you have to write it down. You have to write the plan down. I'm like a broken record. And you have to leave it somewhere that it can be found. Because if it's in a drawer, no one's going to find it and no one's going to implement it. So you have to publish it with your attorney. You have to publish it with your veterinarian, all the caregivers, your family, because everyone needs to know what you want to have done. And again, it has to be in writing. I know that it seems very daunting, but when we do it in October, it's not so daunting because we all get together. We all think of things that the others don't think about. And the time flies, the program gets completed, and everybody's thrilled. So please, 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 if you want to make a plan, remember, it's not a plan about death. Right, Connie? Right, Sally?
That's absolutely true. And on your point about ask your vet tech for your vet techs for pet sitters. I have personal experience when my husband was down with 3 strokes and I had Casey's litter on the ground. I immediately went to my vet of 33 some odd years, and they have fabulous vet techs there. It's a practice of 4 vets and multiple vet techs, and 2 of them were able to come in and stay with the pups. And of course, they were very skilled, very well trained, knew exactly what to do when I had to be out of the house. And just this morning, I got a text from a friend of mine who is an RN, that's registered nurse, not Rally Novice, who at Children's Hospital LA. And she was asking me, excuse me, phone. Sorry. She was asking me if I knew of any pet sitters because she has a family medical emergency that she's going to be out of town for. And I recommended my 2 vet techs, Jessica and Melissa. Happily, she was delighted. But again, she's an RN at Children's Hospital. And if we have any kind of a disaster in the area, which of course, Los Angeles is, ground zero for disasters, and she has to stay at the hospital, like, for instance, the medical teams in Nolens and Baton Rouge and other places, then, she has a miniature schnauzer. And that dog would be, here at home. So that just happened this morning. And, I cannot emphasize again to have a backup.
I have to tell you, that's such an important story to tell because most people don't really realize that things happen. I mean, we know things happen, right? We do. We know things happen. Shit happens all the time. We go, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. And if we don't make sure that we have people close by and far away to take care of our pets. There were a number of people who left their pets in their homes in New Orleans because they couldn't find a hotel that allowed dogs and they knew they had to get out. So they left the dogs home. Now, I'm not criticizing anyone. Please don't get me wrong. I don't criticize anyone. You do what you have to do. You do the best you can. But if you take the time now before the floodwaters are coming up in your house or before the hurricane is hurrying down the road, to find those 3 or 4 hotels, 5 hours away that take dogs and make a reservation and then take your dogs with you. It's that when they are forecasting the hurricane, you make the reservation. Don't make it on one of the Expedia sites because you'll have to make sure you can cancel it without a penalty. If you make it with the hotel, you usually can cancel it the same day as arrival. So nothing lost, nothing, no problem. But you have a reservation and people just don't think to do that. Oh, wait, there's a hurricane coming in Louisiana. Maybe I should get a room in Pensacola. Maybe I should get a room in Texas. Maybe I should get a room anywhere but Louisiana. And that would be great because you just take your dogs with you, but you have to remember to do it before the hurricane is knocking on the door. I don't know how many of you saw, and of course, I'm always astute to this. How many of you saw the traffic leaving Louisiana? And I counted 4 horse trailers. I was like a raving maniac. My husband says, you cannot do this. You cannot get crazy like this. I said, with horses, you really have to leave 2 days before the hurricane hits. I know it may not hit, and it may be expensive to leave with your horses 2 days before. However, being stuck in bumper to bumper traffic with horses in trailers, if anyone knows about horses on this call, they can't really stand there for 10 hours. It's not good for them. And you can't pull off the side of the road and just let them pee on the side of the road like you can your dogs. Not safe, A. Can be spooked by big tractor trailers going by, B. Just not a great idea. So I know it's not easy, but it really is important. So when you're preparing for a disaster, make sure you have that plan set up. Check hotels that take dogs 2 hours away, 3 hours away, 4 hours away, so that you can stagger them. Okay, I only have to go 2 hours because I got that room. But you really need to make sure you do that up front. Finding caregivers, great idea to do vet techs, but we found during COVID when we were having these conversations that you needed to have your next door neighbor too. Preferably the nosy neighbor, because the nosy neighbor is the one who will be able to come over and tell the EMTs who are carrying you out on a stretcher because you fell or the dog tripped you and you're leaving or whatever, that they know who the dog caregivers are. And so the dogs don't go to animal care and control. Now, we say this all the time, and I know that all of you have heard this, but for Joanne's sake, if the animals go to animal care and control and you really are ill, like you have COVID and you go into an ICU and you're on an intubator, animal care and control only holds your dog for a certain period of time. And if you don't make a plan to get that dog out of animal care and control, and say it's a purebred dog, well, they'll call a purebred rescue or shelter to take the dog. That shelter or rescue will put the dog up for adoption after a certain number of days. And if you're not actively looking for the dog and telling them they can't place the dog and the dog is placed, you'll never get it back. And people just don't know this. I'm now talking to the professional handlers in the AKC because they don't really have a plan for what happens to the dogs if something happens to them. Better yet, Connie, what happens to the dogs if something happens to us? So we get into an accident, they have our dogs. What are they supposed to do? And so we're putting together a program for professional handlers to make sure not only do their clients know what happens to the dogs if something happens to them, but that they know what to do with the dogs if something happens to the dog's owners. So now is the time. I always open it up for questions. If anybody has any questions, I'll stay on as long as I need to answer them. I know, Kathy, you emailed me earlier that you had a few questions. Maybe I answered them in my co-ownership blah-blah-blah, but maybe not all of them.
Well, I asked the question, what happens if you can't think of people or you don't feel that you have people to take the dogs. I mean, I know people in the dog world, but I don't want my dog in a kennel.
Right. So that's where it comes into fruition that you want to make sure that you get to know the neighbors, so the neighbors can hold the dog till somebody comes. Also, if you don't want your dog to go to a kennel, then you co-own the dog and the co-owner might own a kennel, then you find places where the dog can go that is someplace you'd like the dog to go. So you have friends, they might not live in the state. And if we go into a pandemic again, as I said, really stinky, because I mean, Governor Cuomo shut New York. So my caregivers couldn't come from Connecticut and Maryland. Something to think about. But I did have people then in New York who could take the dogs, because I put 3x5 cards in mailboxes of everyone who had a dog in my neighborhood. So I knew there were people in my neighborhood who could take my dogs. Connie, what, my friend?
Well, to answer Kathy's question, just from my background as the rescue chair of my local breed club, Kathy, do you have purebreds?
Yes, she has Irish.
Okay. If you have if you have a local breed club, it undoubtedly has a rescue team. And even if you need to use the rescue team on a temporary basis for fostering, they are your go-to backup. And failing that, your national breed club, ISCA, should be able to perform the same service because, again, they're nationwide and they all have rescue teams. Our national breed club does temporary fostering for people who need it.
You know, Deborah said.
Go ahead.
Deborah said, I just moved to the state of North Carolina. I haven't joined a local breed club, which I should. When I was on Long Island, I did. So certainly that's something to think about. But when Deborah's talking about a breeder is always willing to take the dog back, there are some breeders who have many, many dogs, and you might not want the dog to be in that kind of a situation. You might want to place it in a home, you know,
that's
where
why you have to have that conversation. It's not a difficult conversation.
It's not an easy conversation to have.
But by the same token, we have done for breeders who have had to take dogs back under various circumstances, including old age or death or, you know, whatever. Our rescue team has done what we call breeder assist, where a breeder who is a club member comes to us and says, hey, I got this dog back, some as old as 13 years old. And I cannot bring this dog into, you know, my own home, my own kennel, but can you help with your list of people who are, you know, waiting for an adoption, waiting to rehome? And that's why your local breed club is really so essential.
It really is helpful. And the other piece that I know Kathy wants to address is how do you have that conversation with the co-owner? Because the breeders are the co-owner, sort of like me that I started at the beginning, sort of like me saying, yeah, you're never placing a dog that I bred, it's coming home to me. However, if one of my owners came to me and said, listen, my husband loves this dog. Okay, fine. Then your husband and I'll get into the same contract, which says that if something happens to him, then the dog comes back to me. And then I would find 2 or 3 people to say, okay, my husband, my children, my best friend, these 3 people are the people I would love to have the dog go to. And most of the time, breeders, as long as they know up front, you're transparent, you introduce them to the person is willing to enter into an agreement with them that's similar to yours, i.e., if something happens to them, it goes to this person or back to the breeder. It goes to this person, or back to the breeder. The crux of the contract term, probably in your contract with your breeder, is that they want to make sure you don't give their dog away. That's the crux.
Right.
That's the crux. So what you want to do is you want to say, I am not giving your dog away. I have found this perfect home for your dog. And this person, Connie Kohler, and this other person, Sally Anderson, and this other person, Joanne Morrison, are willing to enter into a contract with you to do the same thing I'm going to do if something happens to them. But this way, we have 3 bites at the apple. And they're willing to meet you, and they're willing to enter into a return the dog to you if it can't go to them contract. Because as I said at the beginning, if your breeder doesn't want to take your dog back, doesn't sign a contract where you must return your dog, think about how important that dog is to them. Most of us grudgingly give our dogs to other people. I know that Mary Goki would immediately say that I just lend my dogs to people, and that in fact, the dogs are always mine. But, quite frankly, it makes my owners feel very good that I'm always there to take the dogs. I don't happen to have, a huge kennel. Now I'll probably have no kennel. So everybody will be living willy-nilly in my house. But this is something you have to address up front, because I know it's a very sticky wicket. And when I speak to breeders, I'll have to tell you that I say to them, listen, if your co-owner comes up to you and says, my husband, my sister, my son, my daughter want to take the dog after something happens to me, what do you think? They're fine with it, because they don't want your dog back either. They have their own dogs. They don't want to have to find a new, they just want to know where this dog is. And if she's a young dog and you owe them a litter, they're going to have to abide by that contract. So whoever is taking your dog has to abide by the terms of your contract. And if you're supposed to give a litter back, they're going to have to give a litter back. So, you have to read the terms of the contract. But transparency is key. Don't try to sneak it by, because then they will absolutely never let that person have the dog just because. Any other questions? Go ahead.
I have one other quick question, Deborah. When you were talking about making a reservation in a hotel that allowed dogs, and you said some people left their dogs behind because they couldn't find a hotel, if you go to a hotel and it's a hurricane crisis situation, are you saying that they actually would say to you, you can't bring that dog into the room? Because I'd kill them at that point.
If they don't allow dogs in the hotel, it's unlikely that they, are going to make an exception for your dog. There are dog-friendly hotels and non-dog-friendly hotels. And so maybe you can talk them into it and pay an astronomical amount of money, like $100 extra a day, to have your dog stay with you in a non-dog hotel. But why would you do that when, on CBS or ABC or NBC, when they say a hurricane's coming, count 2 hours north, south, east, or west, and make a reservation at La Quinta or at Holiday Inn Express. Call and say, I have dogs. Residence Inn. Just make a reservation somewhere where they allow dogs. I think it on Expedia or Travelocity, because most of those don't allow you to cancel them.
I think it probably makes sense to find the hotels or the motels in the area long before there's ever an issue to know.
That's my hope. That's my hope, is that you go out and do this homework so that when the hurricanes call, you call the Holiday Inn in Asheville, which is 3 hours away or 5 hours away, right? It's 3 hours away from you, 5 hours away from me. So that I know when the hurricane's coming, I'm going to be all the way inland in Nashville.
Right.
Yeah. It's a no-brainer, but you have to do it. A lot of people who come to my programs, like the one in October, say, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. And then they never do it. Because it's one Saturday. Call 3 or 4 hotels and say, listen, you're in Danbury, you're in Vernon, Connecticut, you're in, I don't know, Lehigh, Pennsylvania. And that's as far inland as I want to go, because I think the hurricane isn't going to come there. Do you take dogs? And yeah, it'll take you 3 hours to get there, but you'll be fine and you won't be, worried about having your dogs stay at the house by themselves. But you have to think ahead. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
and you can go online too, like for instance, the big chains like Holiday Inn Express, Residence Inn, Motel 6, all of them, and they will tell you, right online what hotels and hotel brands in their chain are pet friendly.
Yep.
Right off the bat. I mean, I do that when I travel for dog shows all the time.
That's under the M, right? Make a plan. That's part of the plan. You have to think ahead. So before we close, I want to check in with Kieran. Anything new with One-Eyed Leo? I guess Joanne left us. We were busy, but she didn't unmute herself. So
I suppose a couple of things. We have included a new chapter. So
wow.
So that There's just a few reviews, and I thought it makes sense actually to include one new chapter on body language and a dog giving consent or a dog withdrawing consent.
Oh, fabulous.
So that is in there. And
Who wrote that chapter? Did you?
who wrote that chapter? I think it was about 4 or 5. It's like everything else in the book.
It's a conglomeration of good
It's a
people.
collaboration, and
That is
it's
really
all-
very important. Reading the language, the ears, the eyes, the lips, the licking,
tail.
all of that. Tail. Oh yeah,
yeah,
tail.
that's in there. So I will.
Hackles.
That's in there. I will send. It's sort of odd trying to get the factual material, and then we just sort of rejig the love story to keep everything in
Right.
track. So I think so, but that is, I think that is the absolute end of it now.
Well, you know what? There can always be a volume 2.
Can be a volume 2. Yeah, you never say never.
Never say never.
True. So
I'm rewriting nip to the bud, not in the button. It's not going to say how to use mediation to resolve conflicts over animals. It's going to say nipped in the bud, not in the butt. How to resolve conflicts over animals, period. Just how do you do it? It's an easy thing to do, and we're looking at it. The conscious contract, the conscious conversation, the good conflict over the high conflict. So it'll probably come out in 22 because I'm just not moving as fast as I used to move. Does anyone else have any questions? Everybody good? I'm so grateful you guys are here. You make my Wednesday nights. And until next week, kiss all the babies for me. And I hope it's not too hot in Tenerife. It was 92 degrees here in Beaufort, North Carolina. I want to run away from home. But
It's going to be cooler tomorrow, Deborah.
Bull dinky.
And
Okay.
Sally, do you have a basement?
We have a basement.
Yeah,
Well, as a kid who grew up in Tornado Alley, head for the basement.
that's right.
You'll be safe.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Susie
Okay.
Sullivan headed for the bathtub with the dogs and put a mattress over her head. So it thankfully did not come down her block, but it came down 2 blocks near her. So you guys take good care. Love you all. And until next Wednesday, this is Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law Mediation, the Why Do Pets Matter podcast, and of course, this wonderful MAAP community. I'm so grateful for all of you. Take good care.